They said she was broken, worthless, barren. In a world where a woman's worth is measured by the children she bears, Arabella Douglas became the ultimate failure. One by one, every pack in the Northern Alliance cast her out. Not just strangers, but her own blood. Her own uncle stood before hundreds and declared her unworthy. They sentenced her to die in the Forbidden Wastes during the cruelest winter in a century, expecting her frozen corpse to be found when the snow melted. A warning to others, a cautionary tale. They were wrong. 3 months later, when a plague tears through their territories, turning wolves feral, breaking sacred bonds, shattering families, they'll send their Alpha King to the wastes. Desperate for salvation, what he finds instead will force him to his knees. Because the woman they called Barren, she's about to become the most powerful Luna the wolf world has seen in 1,000 years, and she holds their entire future in her hands. The question is, will she save them, or will she let them burn? The stone courtyard of Silver Pine Pack was built to withstand sieges, to endure wars, to stand as a monument to wolf strength for 1,000 years. But on this winter day, it served a different purpose: judgment. Hundreds of wolves in human form crowded the space, their breath misting in the frigid air, their faces a mixture of pity, disgust, and morbid curiosity. They had gathered to witness something that happened perhaps once in a generation, the condemnation of one of their own. Arabella Douglas stood in the center of a circle marked by ancient stones, each one carved with the symbol of the Northern Alliance. She was 24 years old, small for a she-wolf, with long auburn hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, and green eyes that had once been bright with hope. Now those eyes were dull, resigned. She wore nothing but a thin healer's robe, cream-colored linen that offered little protection against the cold. No cloak, no furs. They had taken those from her that morning, along with everything else. Her breath came in short, visible puffs. She was shivering, though whether from cold or fear, even she couldn't say. Above her, on an elevated stone platform that doubled as both throne and judgment seat, 5 pack alphas sat in a semicircle. 5 of the most powerful wolves in the north. 5 judges who had already decided her fate before she'd even entered the courtyard. To the far left sat Alpha Garrett Stone of Silverpine, the man who had been her mate for 2 years. His face was carved from the same cold granite as the fortress walls. No warmth, no recognition of the nights they'd shared, the promises he'd made. Beside him, Alpha Tobias Douglas of Rivermoon, her uncle, her mother's brother, the man who had raised her after her parents died when she was 12, the man who had once called her Little Moonbeam and promised to always protect her. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Next to Tobias sat Alpha Marcus Vale of Ironwood, younger than the others, ambitious, with a cruel twist to his mouth that suggested he enjoyed this spectacle. Fourth was Alpha Regina Frost of Nightshade, the only female alpha in the Alliance. Her silver hair was pulled back severely, her pale blue eyes as cold as her name suggested. And at the center, elevated slightly higher than the others, sat Alpha King Jack Hansen of Stormcrest. He was the most powerful wolf in the Northern Alliance, perhaps in all the territories. Tall and broad-shouldered, with jet-black hair and storm-gray eyes that seemed to see through flesh and bone to the soul beneath. A scar ran from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone, a reminder that even kings must fight for their crowns. His gaze was fixed on Arabella, and there was something in it she couldn't name. Something that made her wolf, Kira, whimper deep inside her mind. "Why does he feel important?" Kira whispered. "Why does looking at him hurt?" Arabella didn't have an answer. Healer Damian Cross stepped forward from the crowd, holding a scroll tied with black ribbon. Black for death, black for endings. His hands trembled slightly as he unrolled the parchment. He had been Arabella's teacher once, had trained her in the healing arts. Now he couldn't look at her. "By order of the Northern Alliance." His voice cracked, then steadied. I present the findings of my medical examination. The crowd fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Arabella Douglas has been mated to Beta Garrett Stone of Silverpine for 2 full years. In that time, despite regular relations, there has been 0 conception, 0 pregnancies, not even a false start. Someone in the crowd gasped. Another whispered a prayer to the moon goddess. I have examined her thoroughly, Damien continued, his voice growing stronger as he recited clinical facts, distancing himself from the woman he once mentored. I have consulted the ancient texts. I have performed every test known to our kind. He paused, and the pause stretched into eternity. My diagnosis is conclusive and without doubt. Arabella Douglas is barren. The word echoed across the courtyard like thunder. Barren. It crashed into Arabella's chest, stealing her breath. She had known this moment was coming, had known for weeks as the whispers grew louder, as Garrett grew colder, as her uncle stopped visiting. But knowing and hearing were 2 different things. The crowd erupted in whispers. Barren. The healer who cannot create life, cursed by the goddess. What shame for the Douglas line. Arabella's mind flashed back to a memory she'd kept locked away. She was 7 years old, sitting in her mother's lap before the fire. Mama, what's the most important thing a woman can do? Her mother had smiled, stroking her hair. A woman's greatest gift is life, little one. To bring pups into the world, to raise them strong and true. That is our sacred duty. Will I be a good mama one day? The very best, my darling. I see it in your heart. But her mother had been wrong. Before we continue, I need to ask you something. Have you ever felt worthless? Have you ever been judged for something beyond your control? Drop a comment and let me know, because what happens next? It's going to change everything. And if you're already hooked on Arabella's story, hit that like button and subscribe, because this tale gets darker before the dawn. Trust me, you don't want to miss what she becomes. Now, back to the judgment. In medieval wolf society, a barren woman was the worst kind of curse. Aluna's primary duty was producing strong heirs to continue the bloodline, to keep the pack powerful. Without that ability, a woman had no value, no purpose. Barren women were either cast out to die or kept as servants, broken things, objects of pity and disgust. Arabella had known this her whole life, had seen it happen to others, had whispered prayers of gratitude that it would never be her. Now she stood in the center of the circle, and 5 alphas were about to decide her fate. Garrett Stone rose first. He was handsome in a cold, sharp way, all angles and intensity. He had courted Arabella when she was 22, fresh from her healing training. He had been charming then, attentive. He had promised her a future. Now he looked at her like she was a piece of spoiled meat. I, Beta Garrett Stone. His voice rang out clear and merciless. Reject Arabella Douglas as my chosen mate. Even though they had never completed a true fated mate bond, the words still hit like a physical blow. Arabella's knees nearly buckled. Her wolf Kira howled inside her mind. 2 years I have wasted, Garrett continued, and there was genuine anger in his voice now. 2 years of shame. 2 years of whispers and mockery because my mate cannot fulfill the most basic duty of a she-wolf. He gestured at her with disgust. She has failed. She is broken. She is no longer welcome in Silverpine territory. I cast her out. He sat down, and the crowd murmured approval. Arabella's eyes moved to her uncle, to the one person who should defend her, who should stand up and say, "She is family. We protect our own." Alpha Tobias Douglas stood slowly, and for a moment, one desperate, hopeful moment, Arabella thought he might do it, might speak for her. Then he opened his mouth, and her hope died. River Moon Pack cannot shelter one who brings such dishonor. His voice was flat, emotionless, as if he were discussing the weather. The Douglas line has been strong for 10 generations. We cannot allow this failure. to taint our legacy. Finally, he looked at her, and the guilt in his eyes was almost worse than the words. "You are cast out, niece, for the good of the pack." For the good of the pack. The betrayal cut deeper than Garrett's rejection. This was her blood, her family, the man who had tucked her into bed, who had taught her to track, who had held her when she cried after her parents' deaths. And he was throwing her away like garbage. Alpha Marcus Vale stood next, and there was almost theatrical pleasure in his disgust. "Ironwood has no place for the barren and broken," he declared, his voice dripping with contempt. "The moon goddess has clearly marked her as unworthy. To associate with her would be to spit in the goddess's face." He made a warding sign with his hand, as if Arabella's condition might be contagious. "Cast her out. Let the goddess do with her as she wills." Alpha Regina Frost rose last among the four, her movements precise and controlled. "Nightshade's bloodline must remain pure and strong," she said, her voice cold and clinical, a healer delivering a terminal diagnosis. "We cannot risk association with such failure. The weak must be cut away so the strong can thrive." She looked at Arabella without pity, without emotion. It is simply the way of things. 4 rejections, 4 judgments, 4 death sentences dressed in different words. All eyes turned to the center throne, to the Alpha King, to the one whose word was law across all the Northern Alliance. Jack Hansen hadn't moved during the others' declarations. He sat perfectly still, his storm-gray eyes locked on Arabella's face. His jaw was clenched so tight that the muscle jumped. His hands gripped the arms of his throne until his knuckles were white. Something was wrong with him. Arabella could sense it, even from a distance. Her wolf Kira was pacing, agitated, pressing against her consciousness. "Something's happening. I don't understand. Why does he smell like what?" Arabella asked internally. "Like home." That made no sense. Arabella had never even met Jack Hansen before today. Jack couldn't breathe. Every fiber of his being was screaming at him to stop this, to leap down from the platform and protect her, to kill anyone who dared threaten what was his. But she wasn't his. She was a stranger, a woman he'd never met, a healer from a minor pack who had proven herself worthless by failing to produce heirs. So why did sentencing her feel like ripping his own heart out of his chest? "Mate!" his wolf snarled. "Mate! Protect! Mate!" "She's not our mate," Jack growled back internally. "We don't have a mate." "Liar, can't you feel it? Can't you smell it?" He could. That was the problem. Underneath the fear scent rolling off her, underneath the despair, there was something else. Something that called to every primitive instinct he had. Something that made his wolf throw itself against his control, demanding to be released, demanding to claim. But he was Alpha King. He had a duty. He couldn't be weak. Couldn't show favoritism to a barren woman just because some part of him felt an inexplicable pull toward her. He stood, and his presence filled the courtyard like a physical force. "By the authority of the Northern Alliance," his voice carried across the crowd, deep and absolute, "and by the grace of the moon goddess herself." He looked at Arabella, really looked at her, took in her trembling form, her defiant chin, her green eyes that held both fear and strange dignity. And for one moment, one single heartbeat, their eyes met. The world tilted. Jack's breath caught. Something passed between them, something electric and ancient and terrifying. For that moment, nothing else existed. Not the crowd, not the judgment, just the two of them, connected by an invisible thread that seemed to stretch across the courtyard and wrap around both their hearts. Arabella felt it too. Her eyes widened, her lips parted in shock. "What?" she whispered. Then Jack crushed the feeling down, locked it away, and finished his sentence. "Arabella Douglas is hereby exiled to the Forbidden Wastes." The crowd gasped. Exile to the Wastes was a death sentence. Everyone knew that. No wolf had ever returned from that cursed territory. "She will be escorted to the boundary at dawn," Jack continued, his voice hard as iron. "She will be given one cloak and nothing more. Any pack that offers her shelter will be considered in rebellion against the crown." He paused, and his next words came out rougher than he intended. "This is my decree." Silence fell over the courtyard. Then Arabella spoke. Her voice was quiet, but it carried in the stillness. It was steady despite her trembling body, dignified despite her tears. "I accept your judgment, Alpha King." She looked at each of them in turn, Garrett, Tobias, Marcus, Regina. Then her eyes returned to Jack. "May the moon goddess be kinder to you all than you have been to me." It could have been a curse. It could have been a prayer. Jack would remember those words for the rest of his life. Dawn came too quickly. 2 guards escorted Arabella to the pack boundaries. They were young, uncomfortable with their task, but orders were orders. They gave her 1 fur cloak, thick and warm, but it wouldn't be enough. Not where she was going. No food, no water, no supplies. "You won't need them long," one guard muttered, not quite meeting her eyes. They walked in silence through the pre-dawn darkness, their boots crunching in fresh snow. The temperature dropped with every step they took northward, away from civilization, toward the cursed territory. Finally, they reached the boundary. An ancient stone marker stood at the edge of the known world. It was tall as a man, carved with symbols so old that no one remembered their meaning. But the words etched across the top were clear enough. Beyond the marker, the landscape changed. The trees were dead, twisted things, black against the white snow. No birds sang, no animals moved. The very air felt wrong, heavy with some ancient curse or forgotten magic. The temperature was noticeably colder past the boundary, as if the wastes existed in a different season than the rest of the world. The guards stopped at the marker. They wouldn't cross. Superstition or wisdom? Arabella didn't know. "Go on, then," the first guard said, gesturing toward the R's. "Wastes." Arabella looked at the dead landscape, looked at her death. "We should run," Kira whispered in her mind. "Find another territory. There are packs to the south, across the ocean. We could—" "Where?" Arabella interrupted gently. "Every pack knows I'm exiled. The decree went out yesterday. We're marked. We're alone. Then we fight. Then we die free," Arabella said softly. Kira was silent for a moment. Then we die free." Arabella pulled the cloak tighter around her shoulders, lifted her chin, and stepped across the boundary. The guards watched her go, 2 figures disappearing into white nothing. The cold was worse than she'd imagined. It wasn't just physical cold. It was deeper than that. It sank into her bones, into her soul. It made her feel hollow, empty, as if the wastes were draining the life from her with every step. Arabella walked for hours, maybe days. Time seemed strange here, elastic. The sun never fully rose. It remained a pale disk behind thick gray clouds that seemed to press down on the world. Snow fell continuously, covering her tracks, covering everything. There were no landmarks, no sense of direction, just endless white and black, snow and dead trees. Her feet were numb, her hands were numb. Ice had formed in her eyelashes. "How far do we go?" Kira asked, her mental voice weak. "Until we can't anymore," Arabella replied. "That's not a plan. It's the only plan we have." She walked until her legs gave out. It happened near a frozen stream, a ribbon of ice winding between dead trees. One moment she was walking, the next she was on her knees, then on her side, the snow surprisingly soft beneath her cheek. Comfortable, she thought distantly. I'm going to die comfortable. Her vision blurred, the edges darkened. Kira's voice faded to a whisper. I'm sorry I couldn't save us. Arabella's eyes drifted closed. She waited for death. Instead, she heard footsteps. She forced her eyes open, just a crack, and saw through failing vision a figure approaching. A man. He was shirtless despite the brutal cold, his torso covered in ancient tribal markings that seemed to move in the dim light. His hair was long and dark, his face ageless. He could have been 30 or 300. Two massive black wolves flanked him, each one the size of a small horse. Their eyes glowed amber in the twilight. The man looked down at her, and when he spoke, his voice was deep and ancient, like stone grinding against stone. So the bloodline finally awakens. He crouched beside her, and his eyes, they were silver, pure silver. Come, first daughter, your trial begins now. First daughter? Arabella tried to speak, but no sound came out. What does he mean? Then darkness swallowed her completely, and she knew nothing more. Arabella expected death in the frozen wastes. Instead, she woke to discover the truth that will shatter everything she believed about herself. The Pax didn't just abandon a barren woman, they exiled the one person who could save them all. And the mysterious immortal who's been waiting 1,000 years for her, he's about to put her through hell itself to unlock the power sleeping in her blood. Warmth. That was the first sensation that pierced through Arabella's consciousness. Warmth when she should have been frozen solid. Warmth when she should have been dead. Her eyes fluttered open. She was lying on thick furs before a roaring fire, the flames casting dancing shadows across ancient stone walls. The air smelled of cedar smoke and something else, something old and sacred that made her wolf stir uneasily in her mind. "We're alive," Kira whispered, confused. "How are we alive?" Arabella pushed herself up on her elbows, wincing at the ache in her muscles. Every part of her body hurt, but she was warm, dry, and inexplicably not dead. She was in some kind of temple. The walls were carved stone, impossibly preserved despite their obvious age. Symbols covered every surface, spirals and moons and wolves running in eternal circles. Some of the carvings glowed with a faint silver light, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Welcome back to the world, Arabella Douglas." She jerked her head toward the voice. The man from the waist sat across the fire, watching her with eyes that gleamed silver in the firelight. He wore simple leather pants now, but his torso was still bare, revealing those strange tribal markings that seemed to shift and move when she wasn't looking directly at them. He was ageless. His face could have belonged to a man of 30 or 300. There was something timeless about him, something that made her instinctively understand that he had walked the earth long before she was born and would continue walking it long after she was dust. "Or should I say," he continued, his voice like stone grinding against stone, "Luna Prime?" Arabella scrambled backward until her back hit the wall. "Who are you? Where am I? What do you want?" The man didn't move, didn't react to her fear. He simply watched her with those ancient silver eyes. "I am Silas Kane," he said calmly, "and you're in the Heart Temple, sacred ground of the first Luna. As for what I want..." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I've been waiting for you for 1,000 years. "His power," Kira whispered, pressing close to Arabella's consciousness. "I can feel it. It's ancient, primal, like the earth itself." 1,000 years, Arabella's voice cracked. "That's impossible. You're not that old." "I'm older," Silas said simply. "The Forbidden Wastes aren't cursed, Arabella. They're sacred, a testing ground for the Luna Prime bloodline. Every millennium, the first Luna's power reincarnates in a woman descended from the original line." He leaned forward slightly. "You are that woman." Arabella laughed, a brittle, desperate sound. "You're insane. I'm not special. I'm barren. I'm broken. Every healer, every alpha, they all said..." "They said what they believed," Silas interrupted, his voice hard. "They were wrong. How can you possibly..." "Your body wasn't broken, Arabella." His silver eyes seemed to look straight through her. It was waiting. Silas stood in one fluid motion and gestured for her to follow. "Come, let me show you." Against every instinct screaming at her to stay put, Arabella rose on shaky legs and followed him deeper into the temple. They entered a vast chamber, its walls covered in intricate carvings. But these weren't random symbols. They told a story. "The first Luna," Silas said, running his hand along the ancient stone. "She who walked in the time before Pax, when wolves were wild and disconnected from the divine." The carvings depicted a woman standing on a cliff, her arms raised to the moon. Wolves gathered at her feet, hundreds of them, thousands. Silver light streamed from her hands, connecting her to each wolf, connecting them all to each other and to something vast and celestial above. "She was the anchor," Silas continued, "the bridge between the physical world and the divine. Through her, the moon goddess blessed the wolves with civilization, with pack bonds, with the ability to shift and think and love." Arabella stared at the carving. The woman's face was turned toward the moon, but her profile was visible. She looked exactly like Arabella. That's impossible," she breathed. "The first Luna's power doesn't die," Silas said. "It sleeps. Every 1,000 years, it awakens in a daughter of the original bloodline." He turned to face her fully. "The Douglas line is old, Arabella. Older than you know. Your mother carried the dormant gene. So did her mother and hers. For 100 generations it slept, waiting. Waiting for what? For you." Arabella shook her head, backing away. "No, you're wrong. I can't be this Luna Prime. I couldn't even have a child with my own mate." "The Luna Prime power prevents conception until fully awakened," Silas said, his voice matter of fact. "Otherwise, the pregnancy would kill both mother and child. Your body was protecting you, protecting the power. It had nothing to do with being barren and everything to do with being divine." He moved closer, and his presence seemed to fill the chamber. "Garrett Stone was never your true mate. That's why it failed. The power knew he wasn't worthy of carrying your bloodline forward." Arabella felt like the floor was tilting beneath her feet. "This is insane. All of this is—" "Proof, then," Silas said. He pulled a silver knife from his belt, and before Arabella could stop him, dragged it across his palm. Blood welled, dark and thick. "Touch it," he commanded, holding out his hand. "I'm not—" "Touch it, Arabella, or live the rest of your short life wondering if I was telling the truth." She hesitated, every healer instinct warring with her fear. Finally, she reached out and pressed her fingertips to the wound. The moment skin met skin, silver light exploded between them. Arabella gasped as power surged through her, ancient, vast, terrifying in its scope. It flooded her veins like liquid moonlight, making every nerve sing. Her hands glowed with that same silver radiance, and beneath her fingers she felt Silas's flesh knitting back together. In seconds, the wound was gone. Not even a scar remained. Arabella jerked her hand back, staring at her glowing fingertips in horror and wonder. What did I do?" "Healing," Silas said calmly, examining his palm. "Just the beginning of your abilities." He led her to a still pool of water in the corner of the chamber. "Look." Arabella leaned over the pool and saw her reflection staring back. Her eyes, normally a clear green, flashed pure molten silver for a heartbeat before fading back to their natural color. "The power is dormant, but awakening," Silas said from behind her. "We have 3 months to fully unlock it before it either consumes you or fades entirely." 3 months? Arabella turned to face him. "What happens in 3 months? The winter solstice, the longest night. The moon will be at its strongest, and so will you." His expression grew grave. "If the power awakens without guidance, it will burn you out from the inside. You'll die screaming, and the Luna Prime connection will be lost for another millennium. And if I do whatever this trial is, if you succeed, you'll become Luna Supreme, something beyond Alpha, beyond normal Luna. You'll command all wolves regardless of pack. You'll heal mortal wounds. You'll see through any wolf's eyes across vast distances. You'll wield the moon's energy itself as both weapon and shield. He paused. You'll be the anchor keeping wolf civilization connected to the divine. Arabella sank onto a stone bench, her mind reeling. Those bastards, she whispered, and fury began to burn through the shock. They cast me out for being barren when I was carrying ancient power? They didn't know, Silas said. How could they? The last Luna Prime was 1,000 years ago. The knowledge was lost, the bloodline scattered. I'm not broken, Arabella said, and something fierce kindled in her chest. I was never broken. No, Silas agreed, but the trial ahead will break you if you're not strong enough. What if I fail? What if this kills me anyway? Then you die, Silas said bluntly. Most do. The power is vast and mortal flesh is weak. Arabella looked up at him. What choice do I have? Die out here in the wastes or die trying to become whatever this Luna Supreme is? For the first time, Silas smiled, a real smile. Now you understand. The trial begins at dawn. Dawn came with brutal efficiency. Silas woke her before the sun rose and led her outside into the freezing pre-dawn darkness. First, he said, his breath misting in the cold air, your body must be strong enough to channel the power. Physical weakness is death. What followed was hell. Silas drove her through the snow in a relentless training regimen that would have killed a normal wolf, running for miles through drifts that reached her thighs, climbing ice cliffs with bare hands until her fingers bled, combat training where he moved like water and struck like lightning, knocking her down again and again. Arabella's healer body, built for gentleness, for caring, wasn't prepared. She collapsed within the first hour. Get up, Silas commanded, standing over her. I can't. Luna Supreme cannot show weakness. Get up. She got up. She fell. She got up again. By the third day, Arabella could barely move. Every muscle screamed, but something was changing. Her body was responding to the training faster than should have been possible. Wounds that should have taken days to heal closed overnight. Her stamina increased exponentially. The power was helping her, strengthening her from within. On the third night, Silas led her to the temple's heart chamber, a circular room with a silver pool at its center. Sit, he commanded. Close your eyes. Feel for the threads connecting all wolves. Arabella sat cross-legged at the pool's edge and closed her eyes. At first, there was nothing, just darkness and the sound of her own breathing. Then, whispers. Faint at first, like wind through distant trees, then growing louder. Voices, hundreds of them, thousands, wolves from distant packs, their thoughts bleeding through into her consciousness like water through cracks. Hungry, when will Papa bring food? Love her, should I tell her? The borders, something's wrong at the borders. Dying, she's dying, please goddess let her live. It was overwhelming. A torrent of thoughts and emotions and sensations that weren't hers, crashing into her mind like a tidal wave. Arabella screamed and broke the connection, gasping. Again, Silas said calmly, you must learn to control it or it will drown you. She tried again and again. Each time the voices threatened to overwhelm her, but slowly, painfully, she learned to filter them, to focus on one thread at a time instead of being swamped by the whole. By the end of the first week, Silas tested her healing ability properly. He stood before her in the courtyard and without warning slammed his arm against a stone pillar. The crack of breaking bone echoed across the wastes. "Heal it," he commanded through gritted teeth, his arm hanging at an unnatural angle. "I don't know how," Arabella cried. "You healed my hand. Do it again." "That was different. That was small. This is... do it." Arabella placed her trembling hands on his arm. Nothing happened. She could feel the broken bones grinding beneath his skin, could see the pain in his face, though he made no sound. "Please, she whispered to whatever power slept in her blood. "Please help him." Still nothing. Minutes passed. Silas waited, silent, enduring. Finally, Arabella stopped thinking, stopped trying. She just felt. Silver light bloomed beneath her palms. She felt the power flow through her like a river finding its course. Felt the bones shift, align, knit back together. Felt torn flesh repair itself, blood vessels reconnect. When she pulled her hands away, Silas's arm was whole, and Arabella collapsed, unconscious before she hit the ground. The second week brought faster progress. Arabella grew stronger, faster. Her eyes flashed silver more frequently. She began to hear other wolves' thoughts without trying, had to work to shut them out instead of struggling to hear them. Her combat skills improved until she could hold her own against Silas for a full minute before he inevitably pinned her. But he pushed harder every day. "This is nothing compared to what's coming," he would say whenever she thought she'd reached her limit. On the 14th night during meditation, the vision came. Arabella was deep in the collective consciousness of the wolf packs when suddenly the threads she'd been following turned dark, corrupted. She saw wolves in distant territories writhing in pain. Their eyes turned milky white. Foam gathered at their mouths. They attacked their own packmates, their own families as if possessed. Pack bonds, those sacred connections that made wolves more than animals, snapped like rotting rope. The silver death. Arabella gasped and pulled out of the vision, but Silas was already there. "You saw it," he said. It wasn't a question. What was that?" "That is what happens when the Luna Prime connection is severed," Silas said grimly. "By exiling you before your awakening, the packs broke the anchor. The moon goddess's connection to the wolves is failing." "But I didn't do anything. I didn't even know." "It doesn't matter. Without Luna Prime to channel the divine connection, wolves lose their way. They become feral. The civilized packs crumble." His silver eyes bored into hers. "Without you, every wolf in the north will go feral within 6 months." The weight of it crashed into Arabella like a physical blow. "Children," she whispered. "Families, innocents who had nothing to do with exiling me." "They will all suffer for their leaders' choices," Silas confirmed. "Then what do I do? How do I stop it?" "To complete your awakening, you must return to those who rejected you. You must face the Council of Alphas again, this time as their only salvation. They'll never listen to me. They will beg for your help." Silas's voice was certain. "The question is, how will you answer?" Arabella thought of Garrett's cold rejection, of her uncle abandoning her, of Jack Hansen pronouncing her exile with those storm-gray eyes. Part of her wanted revenge, wanted to watch them burn, but the healer in her couldn't stand by and watch innocents die. "I don't know if I can forgive them," she admitted. "Forgiveness is not required," Silas said, "but choice is." That night, the vision came again, stronger, clearer, more terrible. Arabella saw children crying as their parents turned feral, their eyes going white. She saw mates forced to kill their infected partners. She saw the plague spreading faster than anyone expected, jumping from pack to pack like wildfire. And at the end of the vision, she saw him, Jack Hansen, the Alpha King, in his throne room at Stormcrest. He looked haunted, desperate, aged years in mere weeks. He stood before a map of the Northern Territories, watching pack after pack fall to the plague. His hands were braced on the table, his head bowed. "There has to be an answer," she heard him whisper. "There has to be a way." He didn't know the answer was in the wastes he'd exiled her to, but he would soon. Arabella opened her eyes, silver light still glowing in her pupils. 2 more months of training remained. 2 more months until the winter solstice. And then the woman they'd called Barren would return to show them exactly what they'd thrown away. 2 months in the forbidden wastes. Arabella is no longer the frightened healer they exiled. She's becoming something the wolf world hasn't seen in a millennium. But as her power grows, so does the plague ravaging the Alliance. And in her visions she sees him, the Alpha King who sentenced her to death, the man whose face haunts her dreams. She doesn't know yet that he's her true fated mate, but the Moon Goddess is about to reveal a truth that will complicate everything. Arabella woke on the first day of the second month to find silver light glowing beneath her skin. Not a flash, not a flicker, a steady luminescence that pulsed with her heartbeat, visible through her flesh like moonlight through water. She held up her hands and watched the light dance beneath the surface, intricate patterns that reminded her of the carvings on the temple walls. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's terrifying," Kira corrected. "We're not mortal anymore." Not entirely. She was right. Arabella could feel it, the change going deeper than skin and bone. Her eyes, when she checked her reflection in the sacred pool, were no longer just flashing silver. They were permanently tinged with it, green fading to a luminous silver green that caught the light like gemstones. And the voices. She could hear thoughts of wolves hundreds of miles away now, not just whispers, clear as if they stood beside her. A mother in Nightshade territory singing her pup to sleep, 2 young warriors in Silverpine sparring and laughing, an elder in Rivermoon dying peacefully, his family gathered around him. If she focused, she could even see through their eyes, brief flashes of what they saw, felt, experienced. The power was growing exponentially, and it was intoxicating. "You're progressing faster than any Luna Prime in recorded history," Silas said during their morning training. "The power recognizes your strength. It's eager to fully awaken." That morning, 2 figures emerged from the dead forest, the massive black wolves that had flanked Silas when he found her, each one the size of a small horse, with eyes that glowed amber like banked coals. They approached Arabella, where she stood in the temple courtyard, and both lowered their massive heads in submission. "They recognize Luna Prime," Silas said. "They're yours now, spirit wolves, born of the same ancient magic that created the first Luna. They'll protect you, fight for you, die for you." Arabella reached out tentatively and touched the first wolf's head. Its fur was impossibly soft, and she felt a connection snap into place, not like the bond with Kira, but something older, something that transcended normal wolf hierarchy. Shadow, she named the first one, whose fur was deep black without a hint of color. Storm, she named the second, whose coat seemed to shift like storm clouds. They became her constant companions, following her everywhere, sleeping outside her door at night. In combat training, Arabella was no longer the healer who collapsed after an hour. She moved with supernatural speed and grace, her body responding to threats before her conscious mind registered them. When she sparred with Silas now, silver energy crackled around her fists like lightning, adding devastating force to her strikes. On the 43rd day, she pinned him. It was only for a moment. Silas was still far more experienced, but she had his arm locked behind his back and her foot braced against his spine before he twisted free. He grinned, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "Now you're ready for the real test." He led her to a cliff overlooking the vast expanse of the wastes. The wind howled around them, bitter and cold. "Call the storm," Silas commanded. "What?" "Luna Supreme commands not just wolves, but the moon's power itself. The moon controls tides, weather, the very life force that flows through the world." He gestured to the gray sky. "Call it." Arabella closed her eyes and reached for the power deep within. It responded like a living thing, surging up through her body and out into the world. She felt her consciousness expand, felt herself touch the clouds, the wind, the moisture in the air. "Come," she commanded. The sky responded, Clouds gathered dark and heavy. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Snow began to fall, first a few flakes, then a torrent. Then, with a thought, she stopped it. The snow halted mid-fall, suspended in the air like thousands of tiny stars. Another thought, and it resumed. The power was intoxicating, terrifying. She could feel the storm wanting to obey her, eager to be shaped by her will. When she opened her eyes, her nose was bleeding. "Each use drains you," Silas said, handing her a cloth. "Your mortal form struggles to contain immortal power. The headaches, the nosebleeds, the exhaustion, they'll only get worse." "Then what do I do?" "That's why the final step requires transformation." He looked away, and for the first time, she saw something like regret in his ancient eyes. "What kind of transformation?" Arabella pressed. "We'll discuss that when the time comes. Some truths must be experienced, not explained." A chill ran down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. In her meditations, Arabella watched the outside world collapse. The silver death was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. Through the eyes of distant wolves, she witnessed the horror firsthand. In Silverpine territory, half the warriors were infected, confined in silver cages while they thrashed and screamed. Garrett Stone walked among them, his face haggard, checking on men he'd trained, men he'd fought beside, knowing many of them would have to be put down. In Nightshade, Alpha Regina Frost held a funeral pyre. Her own daughter, a beautiful young woman of 19, had turned feral 3 days ago. Regina had been forced to give the order herself. The Alpha stood stone-faced before the flames, but Arabella could feel her anguish echoing through the pack bonds. In Rivermoon, Uncle Tobias had aged years in mere weeks. He looked like a ghost of himself, wandering his territory, counting the dead. The guilt was eating him alive. Arabella could hear his thoughts. "I cast her out. I abandoned my own blood. Is this my punishment? Is this the goddess's judgment?" But it was Ironwood that caught her attention. Marcus Vale was immune to the plague, completely immune. While wolves around him succumbed, he remained healthy, strong, untouched. And there was something in his bearing, in the way he moved through his territory, that set off alarm bells in Arabella's mind. He seemed pleased. She focused her enhanced vision on him, following his movements through the eyes of other wolves. She saw him in a secret chamber beneath his fortress, surrounded by dark magic texts. Saw him brewing potions in silver cauldrons, the liquid inside glowing with an unnatural green light. Saw him poisoning water supplies with substances that mimicked the symptoms of the silver death. Marcus Vale wasn't suffering from the plague. He was causing it. Arabella gasped and pulled out of the vision, her heart racing. "What did you see?" Silas asked immediately. "Marcus Vale. He's behind the plague. He's been poisoning the packs, making it look like a divine curse." Through more visions over the following days, she watched the full scope of Marcus's conspiracy unfold like a nightmare. She saw him, years ago, bribing healer Damian Cross with gold and threats. "Tell them she's Barren. The king wants the alliance with the Blackwoods and she's in the way." She saw him manipulating Garrett Stone, planting doubts and insecurities. 2 years and no heir? Perhaps the problem isn't with you, my friend. She saw him in dark libraries, studying ancient prophecies about Luna Prime's return. If she awakens, all my plans crumble. She must be cast out before the power manifests. His goal was brutally simple: prevent the Luna Prime awakening, let the plague destroy the current power structure, then emerge as the savior with the cure, which was simply him stopping the poison. He would become Alpha King over the ashes of the alliance, the personal betrayal cut deepest of all. Marcus Vale was Jack Hansen's beta, his closest friend since childhood. The king trusted him completely, sought his counsel on every major decision, considered him a brother, and Jack had no idea his own friend was destroying everything he'd built. Arabella felt rage burn through her, even from exile, even after everything. She was still being betrayed. On the 56th day, Silas found her in the temple's heart chamber, staring into the sacred pool. "You've been avoiding something," he said without preamble. "I don't know what you're—" "The silver threads you see during meditation, the pull you feel towards someone you've never met, or rather, towards someone you've met only once." His silver eyes bore into hers. "It's time you understood the full truth." He handed her a chalice filled with liquid that glowed like captured moonlight. "Moon water," Silas said, "blessed by the goddess herself. Drink. Face what you've been denying." Arabella's hand trembled as she took the chalice. "What will happen?" "You'll see truth, all of it, even the parts you wish you didn't know." She drank. The world tilted, shifted, transformed. The stone temple dissolved like mist, and suddenly Arabella stood in a celestial realm of pure silver light. Stars wheeled overhead, closer than they should be, so close she could touch them. The ground beneath her feet was solid yet transparent, like walking on moonbeams, and before her stood a woman, made of light itself. She was beautiful beyond description, ancient beyond measure. Her form shifted between young and old, maiden and crone, but her eyes remained constant, vast pools of silver that held the weight of eternity. "Daughter," the moon goddess spoke, and her voice was like silver bells, like distant thunder, like the sound the moon would make if it could sing. "You have done well." Arabella fell to her knees, overwhelmed. "Rise," the goddess commanded gently. "You are Luna Prime. You kneel to no one, not even me. We are partners in the great work." Arabella stood on shaking legs. "But there is one truth you must face," the goddess continued, and something like sorrow crossed her luminous features. "Your mate has been waiting for you, though he knows it not." She waved her hand, and a vision appeared in the air between them. Jack Hansen, the Alpha King, at the trial. But now Arabella saw it through different eyes. She felt what he felt, the inexplicable pull toward her, the way his wolf screamed, "Mate," the moment their eyes met, the agony of fighting the bond he didn't understand. She saw him after the trial, alone in his chambers, clutching his chest as phantom pain radiated through him. "What's wrong with me? She's nobody. She's Barren. Why does sending her to her death feel like killing myself?" She saw him in the weeks that followed, drawn repeatedly to the northern borders, staring toward the wastes, unable to explain the longing that consumed him. "He is yours as you are his," the goddess said softly. "True fated mates, bound by ties older than wolf civilization itself." "No," Arabella whispered. "That's not possible. He exiled me. He sentenced me to death." "The Luna Prime power overrides normal mate bonds until awakening," the goddess explained. "It had to be suppressed, or the bond would have interfered with your transformation. You needed to be shaped by hardship, not sheltered by a mate's love." He felt the pull, but thought it was inappropriate attraction to an inferior wolf. His harsh decree was partly him fighting unwanted feelings, trying to prove to himself that you meant nothing. Arabella felt rage and heartbreak war in her chest. "My fated mate exiled me to die. He didn't know," the goddess said. "How could he? The bond was hidden even from him. We were meant to be together, and he threw me away. But now you have a choice," the goddess said, and her voice turned grave. "To become Luna Supreme fully, you must sacrifice all personal bonds, including the mate bond." The words hit like a physical blow. "What? You will save him, save them all, but you cannot have him." The goddess's expression was infinitely sad. "Luna Supreme belongs to all wolves, not just one. The final transformation will sever your mate bond permanently. You will be immortal, eternal, alone. That's not fair. No, the goddess agreed. It's not, but power always has a price. The choice will be yours to make. The celestial realm dissolved, and Arabella found herself back in the temple, gasping, the empty chalice fallen from her hands. Silas was there, watching her with those ancient eyes. "You saw," he said. "Jack Hansen is my mate." Her voice broke. "The man who exiled me, the man whose face I see every time I close my eyes." "I suspected," Silas said. "The way you spoke of him, even with anger, held an undercurrent of something else." "He made a terrible mistake." "Yes, and you'll have to face him, knowing what you know. Can you do that?" Arabella thought of the choice ahead. Save thousands of lives, but lose the mate bond she'd just discovered. Become Luna Supreme, but remain alone for a millennium. "I don't have a choice," she said bitterly. "The plague won't stop itself." But even as she spoke, her heart was breaking. The final week of the 3rd month arrived with brutal intensity. Silas drove her harder than ever before. Combat training that left her bloodied, healing exercises that pushed her to the edge of consciousness, elemental control that made her nose bleed and her vision blur. "When they come, you must be ready," he said. "You'll face not just the alphas, but Marcus's dark magic. You must be strong enough to withstand both." Arabella no longer needed sleep. Her presence made dead plants around the temple burst into bloom, silver flowers that shouldn't exist pushing through snow and stone. Animals approached her without fear, rabbits, foxes, even a young deer that ate from her hand. She radiated authority that made even Silas's wolf submit when she commanded it. On the 87th day, Silas brought her ancient robes. They were beautiful, silver and white fabric that seemed to be woven from moonlight itself, covered in intricate symbols of wolves and moons and spiraling power. Luna Supreme's traditional garb, unchanged for 1,000 years. "When you wear these, there's no going back," Silas said. "You'll be declaring yourself Luna Prime before the world." Arabella took the robes, feeling their weight. "What aren't you telling me about the final step?" "You'll learn when the time comes. Some truths must be experienced, not explained." That night, Shadow lifted his massive head and growled softly. "They're coming," he communicated through their bond. Arabella stood and walked to the edge of the temple, her enhanced senses reaching out. There, 5 wolves in human form traveling together. 5 alphas she recognized instantly through their auras. Jack Hansen, Garrett Stone, Tobias Douglas, Regina Frost, Marcus Vale. 2 days' journey away and closing fast. "They're coming," she told Silas. "Then it's time." He handed her the robes. "Remember who you were when they cast you out. Remember who you've become." Arabella donned the ancient robes, feeling them settle on her shoulders like destiny itself. Silver energy swirled around her, responding to the ceremonial garments. She stood before the temple, looking toward the approaching party, Shadow and Storm flanking her like sentinels. "They cast out a frightened healer," she said softly. "They're about to meet Luna Supreme." But her hands trembled slightly, because Jack was coming, her fated mate who didn't know she was his mate, the man who exiled her, the man she must face, must save, but can never truly have. Storm clouds gathered overhead, literal and metaphorical. "Tomorrow," Arabella whispered, "everything changes." And in the distance, 5 alphas traveled toward their judgment, unaware that the woman they'd condemned held their entire future in her glowing hands. The Alpha King, who sentenced Arabella to death, is about to come face to face with what she's become. He doesn't know she's his fated mate. He doesn't know his closest friend betrayed them all. And he definitely doesn't know that the moment their eyes meet again, the mate bond will crash into him like a tidal wave. In the Forbidden Wastes, the Barren reject is about to become judge, jury, and the only hope for survival, and she's about to make them all kneel. Jack Hansen hadn't slept in 3 days. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw green ones staring back at him, accusing him, haunting him. The woman he'd sentenced to death in the Forbidden Wastes, a woman whose name he couldn't stop thinking about, whose face appeared in every dream, whose exile felt like he'd ripped out his own heart. He didn't understand it. She was nobody, a barren healer from a minor pack. She should have meant nothing, so why did sending her to her death feel like killing himself? "Your Majesty, we should rest," one of his guards called from behind. "We've been traveling since dawn." "No," Jack said, his voice rough. "We keep moving." Behind him rode 4 other alphas, each one haunted by their own demons. Garrett Stone looked like a ghost of himself, his face gaunt, his eyes hollow with guilt. He'd rejected Arabella without a second thought. Now, as half his warriors died in silver cages, screaming as the silver death turned them feral, he wondered if her curse at the trial had been prophecy. "May the moon goddess be kinder to you than you have been to me." The goddess hadn't been kind. Tobias Douglas had aged a decade in 3 months. His hair had gone entirely gray, deep lines carved into his face. He'd cast out his own niece, his sister's daughter, to preserve his pack's reputation. Now that pack was dying, and every death felt like divine punishment. Regina Frost rode in grim silence, her face a mask of control. But Jack knew she'd held a funeral pyre for her own daughter 2 weeks ago. The silver death showed no mercy, not even to Alpha's children. And Marcus Vale? Jack glanced back at his beta, his closest friend since they were boys. Marcus seemed calm, composed, but there was something in his eyes Jack had never seen before, something that looked almost like fear. "Marcus," Jack called, "you've been quiet." "Just conserved energy, my king," Marcus replied smoothly. "The wastes drain even the strongest wolves." They had crossed the boundary an hour ago, and Jack immediately noticed something was wrong. The wastes weren't dead anymore. Silver flowers bloomed impossibly through the snow, delicate blooms that shouldn't exist, that looked like they were carved from moonlight itself. The twisted dead trees they'd expected had new growth, silver-white leaves that rustled in a wind that felt different from natural air. There was life here, strange, ethereal, divine life. "This is wrong," Marcus said, and Jack heard the edge in his voice. "The ancient texts say nothing grows in the wastes. Nothing has ever grown here." "Then the texts are outdated," Jack replied, though unease prickled at the back of his neck. "Keep moving." As they traveled deeper, the pull Jack had been feeling for 3 months grew stronger. It wasn't just curiosity anymore. It was a physical sensation, like a rope around his heart, tugging him forward with increasing urgency. His wolf was going insane. "She's here," it snarled, pacing frantically in his mind. "Our mate is here. I can feel her, smell her on the wind." "I don't have a mate," Jack growled back, but doubt was creeping in. The pull was too strong, too specific, and it was leading him directly into the heart of the wastes. They found a path, or rather, a path found them. Silver markings on trees, glowing faintly, seeming to guide them forward. The guards murmured nervously, making warding signs. "It's as if something wants us to find it," Tobias whispered, his voice shaking. "Or someone," Jack replied. And deep in his chest, where the inexplicable pull originated, he felt certainty settle like a stone. Arabella Douglas hadn't died in the wastes. She was waiting for them. Behind them all, Marcus's hand crept to the dark magic amulet hidden beneath his shirt. His mind raced with calculations and panic. She can't have survived. No one survives the wastes. But if she did, if the power awakened, no, I'll kill her if needed. The plan is too far along to stop now. He'd spent decades orchestrating this. He would not let a barren healer ruin everything. The temple appeared through the snow like a vision from another age. It was massive, a structure of ancient stone that should have crumbled to dust centuries ago, but stood impossibly preserved, as if time itself had forgotten it existed. Silver light glowed from within, spilling through carved windows and making the snow around it shimmer. And at the entrance, two enormous black wolves stood sentinel. They were the size of small horses, with eyes that glowed amber like banked coals. When the expedition approached, both wolves growled, a sound that vibrated through the ground and made every wolf's instinct scream danger. The guards drew their weapons. The spirit wolves' growls deepened. "Wait," Jack commanded, raising his hand. Something told him that attacking would be the last mistake any of them made. For a long moment, nothing happened. The two groups stared at each other, mortal wolves and something far older. Then, without anyone touching them, the massive temple doors began to swing open. Silver light exploded outward, so bright that several guards had to shield their eyes. It wasn't harsh light. It was luminous, otherworldly, like the moon had descended to earth and taken physical form. A figure stood silhouetted in the doorway. Every wolf felt it simultaneously. A pressure, an aura of immense power that crashed over them like a wave. It wasn't threatening. It wasn't aggressive. It simply was. An authority so absolute that resistance never even occurred to them. Jack's knees weakened. Around him he heard gasps, heard armor clanking as guards began to sink. The figure stepped forward into the light. Arabella Douglas. But not the trembling, broken woman from the trial. This was something else entirely. Someone else. She wore ancient robes of silver and white that seemed to be woven from starlight, flowing around her like water. Silver light glowed beneath her skin, visible through her flesh, pulsing with her heartbeat. Her eyes were pure molten silver. No hint of green remained, just that luminous, otherworldly gaze that seemed to see through flesh and bone to the soul beneath. Her auburn hair floated around her face as if moved by an invisible wind, and when she moved, it was with a grace that transcended human capability. She looked like a goddess made flesh. The aura radiating from her intensified, and Jack felt his control slip. One by one, every wolf, alpha or not, warrior or not, dropped to their knees. Not by choice. Her presence commanded it. The guards went face down in the snow. Even the proud alphas knelt, unable to resist the sheer force of divine authority she radiated. Only the figure standing behind her in the temple doorway remained upright, a man with silver eyes and ancient markings, watching with something like pride. "Arabella?" Tobias gasped, his voice breaking. "Impossible," Regina whispered, her usual composure shattered. Garrett, still kneeling, stumbled backward through the snow. What is she?" Marcus's face had drained of all color. His carefully laid plans, his decades of manipulation, his dark magic, all of it crumbling as he stared at the woman who should have been dead. And Jack. Jack stared at her, and the mate bond that had been suppressed for 3 months slammed into him with the force of a lightning strike. His chest exploded with sensation, recognition, longing, possessiveness, love, and anguish, all tangled together. His wolf threw itself against his consciousness, howling in triumph and desperation. "Mate! Mate! Mate! I told you! She's ours!" Every fiber of Jack's being recognized her, the pull he'd felt for months, the inexplicable obsession, the agony of her exile, all of it made terrible, perfect sense. She was his fated mate, and he had sentenced her to death. "You," Jack gasped, clutching his chest as the bond tried to complete itself, tried to snap into place. "You're—" Arabella's silver eyes locked onto him, and her gaze was colder than the wastes around them. "Your mate?" Her voice resonated with power, echoing across the courtyard as if the stones themselves carried her words. "Yes, Alpha King." The title was said without respect, without warmth. "The bond you felt but denied 3 months ago. the pull you dismissed as inappropriate weakness. She took a step forward, and even kneeling, Jack felt the urge to bow lower. The woman you sentenced to death in these very wastes. No, Jack whispered, horror washing over him. No, I didn't know. Arabella, I felt something, but I thought... You thought wrong, she cut him off, her voice sharp as a blade. You chose duty and pride over the mate bond. You chose to believe I was worthless, broken, cursed. Her silver eyes seemed to burn into his soul. You chose to let me die rather than question your own judgment. The power dynamic was complete reversal of the trial. Then she had stood powerless in the center of a circle, while they sat elevated judging her. Now she stood above them, divine, powerful, terrible in her beauty, while they knelt in the snow below, helpless before her authority. The symmetry wasn't lost on anyone. Please, Garrett whimpered, and the sound was pathetic coming from a beta who had once been so proud. We didn't know. How could we have known? Ignorance is not innocence, Arabella said coldly. Jack tried to speak again, tried to find words that could possibly bridge the chasm between them. Arabella, please, let me explain. She raised one hand, and Jack's voice died in his throat. Not by choice. The power of Luna Supreme simply silenced him, as easily as snuffing a candle. You did not come here for apologies, Alpha King, Arabella said, her voice carrying across the frozen courtyard. You came seeking salvation from the silver death. Her silver eyes swept over all of them, Garrett, Tobias, Regina, Marcus, taking in their desperate, broken states. Tell me, she said softly, and the softness was somehow more terrifying than rage. Do you believe you deserve it? Regina Frost stepped forward on her knees, her composure finally cracking. Luna Supreme, our packs are dying. Not just warriors, children, innocents who had no part in your exile, who don't even know your name. My daughter. Her voice broke. My daughter was 19 years old. She turned feral 3 days after her bonding ceremony. I had to... She couldn't finish. Garrett spoke next, his voice hoarse. I know I have no right to ask anything of you. I failed you as a mate, as a wolf, as a man. But please... don't let my failure kill hundreds who never wronged you. Tobias was crying openly now, tears freezing on his cheeks. Arabella, niece, little moonbeam. The old pet name seemed to break something in him. I failed you. I should have protected you. I should have stood against them all. Instead, I cast you out to save my reputation. His voice dropped to a whisper. But the pups of Rivermoon, they're dying. 3-year-olds turning feral in their mother's arms. Please, I'll do anything. I'll step down as Alpha. I'll take any punishment. Just save them. Arabella felt their desperation, their pain, the healer in her, the part that had spent years learning to ease suffering, wanted to help immediately. But the wounded woman, the rejected mate, the exile who had nearly died in the snow, that part wanted to watch them suffer as she had suffered. They would let me die, but beg me to save them, she thought bitterly. Her gaze moved across the kneeling alphas and stopped on Marcus Vale. There. That flicker of fear poorly hidden behind false concern. That corruption she could see with her enhanced sight. Dark magic clinging to him like oil, staining his aura. Before I answer your pleas, Arabella said, her voice ringing with authority, there is something you all should know. She took a step forward, and Marcus visibly flinched. There is a traitor among you, one who orchestrated my exile, one who released the silver death upon your packs. Marcus laughed, a nervous, brittle sound. The Barren healer speaks madness. The plague is divine punishment, not... I am no healer, Arabella interrupted, and silver light flared around her. I am Luna Supreme. I am the bridge between mortal and divine, and I see all. She touched the ground with one hand, and silver energy exploded outward in a wave. See what I see, she commanded. Reality shifted. Suddenly, everyone was inside Arabella's visions, experiencing her memories as if they were their own. They saw through her eyes, felt through her enhanced senses. They saw Marcus Vale 3 years ago, in a dark room with healer Damian Cross. "You will examine her and declare her barren," Marcus commanded, sliding a purse of gold across the table. "The king wants the alliance with the Blackwoods, and she's in the way. But if she's not, actually, she is whatever I say she is, or your daughter has an accident. Choose." They saw Marcus manipulating Garrett Stone over drinks. 2 years, my friend. 2 years without even a false start. Perhaps the problem isn't with you. Perhaps she's defective. They saw Marcus in dark libraries, studying ancient prophecies about Luna Prime. "If she awakens before I can prevent it, all my plans crumble. She must be cast out before the power manifests. And if the king feels something toward her, that bond must be broken before it forms." They saw Marcus in his secret chamber, brewing potions that glowed with sickly green light. Saw him poisoning water supplies across multiple territories. Saw him studying dark magic texts that promised power through chaos. His goal unfolded clearly: prevent the Luna Prime awakening. Let the plague destroy the current leadership. Emerge as savior with the cure. Seize the throne. When the vision ended, the Alphas were staring at Marcus in horror and rage. Marcus knew he was caught. His decades of careful planning, his web of lies and manipulation, all of it exposed in an instant by Luna Supreme's power. He dropped his pretense. "You think you can stop me?" he snarled, dark magic beginning to swirl around him like smoke. "I've spent decades planning this. I will not let some barren bitch ruin everything." He transformed mid-speech, his wolf form erupting forward. But it was wrong. Corrupted. His fur was patchy, his eyes glowing with unnatural green light. Dark magic twisted around him like living shadows. He lunged at Arabella with supernatural speed, claws extended, aiming for her throat. Jack moved on pure instinct. The mate bond roared through him, demanding he protect her at any cost. He leaped between them, ready to take the blow meant for his mate. But Arabella didn't need protection. She didn't flinch, didn't move, didn't even blink. She simply raised one hand, palm forward. Marcus froze mid-leap, suspended in silver light like an insect in amber. He struggled, snarling, dark magic writhing around him, but he was completely immobilized. "You cannot harm Luna Supreme, betrayer," Arabella said, her voice calm and absolute. "Your dark magic is nothing before the moon's true power." She closed her fist. Marcus screamed, a sound of pure agony that echoed across the wastes. The dark magic ripped out of him like smoke being pulled from a fire, leaving corruption-blackened trails across his skin. His wolf form collapsed, reverting to human as every enhancement, every spell, every dark gift was stripped away. He fell to the ground unconscious, no longer a threat, no longer enhanced, no longer anything but a mortal man whose veins ran black with corruption and whose eyes had sunken into his skull. Guards rushed forward, binding him in silver chains. Jack stood slowly, staring at Arabella with a mixture of awe and heartbreak. He was my beta, my friend since we were boys. I trusted him with everything. "He betrayed us all," Jack said, and his eyes found Arabella's. "Betrayed you most of all." "He'll face execution for treason," Jack declared, his alpha authority returning despite his kneeling position. Arabella's expression didn't change. "That is your justice to dispense, Alpha King. I have my own trials to face." With Marcus exposed and defeated, all eyes returned to her. Regina's voice was raw with hope and desperation. "Luna Supreme, will you save us?" The question hung in the frozen air. Arabella looked at each alpha in turn. The ones who had rejected her, who had cast her out, who had sentenced her to death. They knelt before her now, helpless, desperate, completely at her mercy. The power was entirely hers. Behind her, Silas Cain emerged from the temple, his ancient face grim. "The silver death can be stopped," he said, his voice carrying clearly. "The bonds can be reforged. The connection to the moon goddess can be restored." He paused, and something like sorrow crossed his features as he looked at Arabella. "But the price—" "What price?" Jack demanded, struggling to his feet despite the pressure of Arabella's aura. "I'll pay it. Whatever it is, gold, territory, my crown, name it." "It's not yours to pay, Alpha King," Silas said quietly. "Only Luna Prime can make this choice." Arabella closed her silver eyes, and for just a moment she looked like the frightened healer from 3 months ago. Then she opened them, and Luna Supreme stared out at the world. "Tell me," she said to Silas, though her words carried to everyone. "Tell me what I must do. Arabella holds the power to save thousands of innocent lives, but the cost is everything she's ever wanted, her mate, her chance at a normal life, her very mortality. The Alpha King who exiled her now begs her to choose life with him over duty. In the end, the woman they called Barren will make a choice that proves true power comes not from what others give you, but from what you sacrifice for those who never deserved it." Silas's voice was gentle, but his words were brutal. To become Luna Supreme fully, to stop the silver death and restore the divine connection, Arabella must die and be reborn. The silence that followed was absolute. "Die," Jack whispered, the word torn from him. "Not metaphorically," Silas clarified, his ancient eyes fixed on Arabella. "Her mortal form will cease to exist. The Luna Prime power will consume her, break her down to her essence, and resurrect her as an immortal guardian." He gestured to the temple behind them. "She will be bound to the north for the next millennium, just as I was, just as every Luna Supreme before her." "What does that mean?" Tobias asked, his voice shaking. "What will she lose?" Silas's expression was grave. "Everything that makes life worth living." He began to list them, each one a hammer blow. "Normal life, gone forever. She will not age, will not tire, will not need food or sleep or warmth. She will exist, but not live. The ability to have children." His eyes found Arabella's. The ultimate irony. Cast out for being barren, now she must choose to become so. The Luna Supreme cannot bear young. Her womb belongs to divine power now, not mortal creation. Jack made a wounded sound. "The mate bond," Silas continued relentlessly. "Luna Supreme belongs to all wolves, not just one. The connection between mates requires exclusivity, singularity. She cannot be everyone's Luna and one man's mate. And physical form, she will be more spirit than flesh. She can manifest, can be seen and heard, but touch—" He shook his head. "Touch will be like grasping moonlight, present but intangible." Each word was a knife, and Arabella felt them cut deep. She would lose Jack, the mate she had just discovered, the man whose face haunted her dreams. The bond that sang between them would be severed forever. "But she would gain immortality," Silas said, and his voice held respect. "Immense power beyond any Alpha's comprehension. The ability to completely heal the silver death with a thought. The power to reforge all wolf bonds to the moon goddess, ensuring this never happens again. She would become guardian and protector of all northern wolves, a living bridge between mortal and divine." He paused, then added quietly, "There is an alternative." Hope flared in Jack's eyes. "I can extend my guardianship another century. It will weaken the divine connection, but keep things somewhat stable. The plague will slow, but not stop. More will die, but not all." Silas looked at Arabella. "You could keep your current powers, remain mortal, live your life with your mate, have children, grow old together. You've earned that choice, Arabella." Jack fell to his knees before her. Not because her aura compelled him. She had released that pressure. This was his choice. The Alpha King kneeling before the woman he'd exiled, begging. "Arabella?" His voice broke. "I was a fool. I felt our bond and called it weakness. I was too proud, too blind to trust what my wolf was screaming at me." Tears streamed down his face, freezing on his cheeks. "I exiled my own mate because I couldn't admit that I wanted you. That the moment our eyes met, something in me recognized you. That sending you away felt like tearing out my own heart." He looked up at her, storm-gray eyes drowning in anguish. "I just found you. Don't ask me to lose you again. Come back with me. Be my Luna. Be my queen. Let me spend my life, my entire life, making this right. Let me worship you the way a mate should. Let me give you everything you were denied." His voice dropped to a desperate whisper. "The packs can fall. I don't care. I choose you." Behind him, the other alphas stirred. Tobias spoke, his voice raw. "Arabella, you owe us nothing. We cast you out. We failed you. Choose yourself. Choose happiness. You've earned it." Garrett's voice was thick with tears. "I failed you as a mate. Don't compound my failure by sacrificing yourself for wolves who never deserved you." Even Regina, cold Regina Frost, nodded. "If the price is this high, perhaps we don't deserve salvation." The guards, hearing this exchange, looked torn between duty and horror at what was being asked. Arabella closed her eyes, feeling the mate bond pulling at her like a physical rope. She could walk away right now, take Jack's hand, have everything she'd ever wanted, a mate who loved her, children, a normal life. The packs had cast her out. Why should she sacrifice everything for them? Inside her mind, Kira whimpered. "Choose life, choose our mate. We deserve happiness." Her healer heart whispered, "But the innocents, the children dying." Her wounded soul snarled, "They don't deserve your sacrifice." And her evolved spirit, the part that had grown during 3 months in the wastes, said quietly, "But sacrifice isn't about deserving." Another vision crashed over her, unbidden. She saw a mother wolf in Silverpine territory, holding her mate as he thrashed, his eyes white with the silver death. Guards approached with silver chains. The mother screamed, clutching her husband even as he snapped at her, no longer recognizing her face. She saw children in nightshade, screaming as their father was dragged away. He begged them to run, to hide, even as his mind slipped away. "I don't want to hurt you. Please, someone help me. I don't want to hurt my babies." She saw a young girl, maybe 8 years old, in Rivermoon, infected, terrified, locked in a silver cage and crying. "I don't want to hurt anyone. Mama, please, I don't want to be a monster." These wolves hadn't chosen to exile her. They were dying for their leader's mistakes. Arabella opened her eyes. She had released the Luna supreme power, and her eyes were their natural green again, human, mortal, vulnerable. She looked at Jack, and her love for him was written across every feature. "I loved you before I even knew you," she said softly. "The bond sings between us. I feel it in every fiber of my being." Jack's face lit with hope. "In another life, another time, we would have been happy," Arabella continued, and her voice broke. "We would have had pups with your eyes and my hair. We would have grown old together, watching our grandchildren play." "Then choose that life," Jack begged. "Choose us." Arabella's tears fell freely now, freezing as they rolled down her cheeks. "I cannot choose my happiness over thousands of lives. I cannot let children die because I want a normal life. That's not strength. That's not power. That's just selfishness." She turned to Silas. "I accept the mantle. I will become Luna Supreme." Jack's howl was a sound of pure, unadulterated agony. "No! I just found you! He lunged forward, trying to grab her, but silver energy created a barrier between them. He beat against it, desperate. "There has to be another way. There has to be—" "There isn't," Arabella said, her voice breaking even as she stood firm. "And you know it." She looked at him through the barrier, memorizing every feature. "You will be a good king, Jack Hansen. You're already better than you know. Rule well, protect our people, make the North stronger than it's ever been. And somewhere," her voice dropped to a whisper, "in every moonbeam, in every silver ray of light, I'll be watching over you." Jack sank to his knees, his hands pressed against the barrier. "Please, please don't do this." Arabella pressed her hand to his through the energy, and though they couldn't touch, she felt his warmth. "This is my choice," she said. "Finally, mine to make. Not yours, not theirs, mine. And I choose to save them all." Arabella walked to the center of the temple courtyard, and the silver energy barrier dissolved behind her. Snow fell gently, creating a sacred atmosphere. The alphas watched, helpless, as she took her position. Silas began to speak in a language older than memory, words that made the air itself vibrate. Silver symbols appeared in the air around Arabella, forming intricate patterns that rotated slowly. Light began to glow from within her, not just beneath her skin now, but from her very core. Arabella rose off the ground, suspended in the air by invisible forces. Her mortal form began to become translucent, as if reality itself was losing its hold on her. The pain hit like lightning. She screamed, a sound that echoed across the wastes and made every wolf cower. This was agony beyond description. Every cell in her body was being unmade, broken down, dissolved. "Arabella!" Jack screamed, held back by the ritual energy. "Arabella, don't leave me! Arabella!" The light grew brighter, brighter, until it was blinding. And then Arabella's mortal body shattered. She exploded into 1,000 points of silver light, scattering like stars across the courtyard. Jack collapsed as the mate bond severed. It felt like a knife through his heart, like his soul was being torn in half. He clutched his chest, gasping, tears streaming down his face. Tobias cried out in anguish. Even Garrett sobbed, the last connection to the woman he'd once called mate, snapping like rotted rope. Silence fell over the temple. The points of light hung suspended in the air, drifting gently like snow. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the lights began to swirl. They danced through the air, moving faster, coming together. They coalesced, forming a shape, humanoid but taller, more ethereal than before. The light solidified. Arabella stood there, but transformed beyond recognition. She was ageless now, her beauty transcendent and terrible. Power radiated from every pore. Her eyes were permanently silver, glowing like molten starlight. Her robes seemed to be part of her now, flowing like liquid moonlight, moving without wind. She descended slowly, her feet touching the snow without leaving any prints. She was no longer fully mortal, something caught between physical and spirit, between earth and divine. Luna Supreme Arabella raised her hands to the sky. "By the moon goddess's grace," her voice resonated with divine authority, "I restore what was broken." Silver energy exploded from her in a massive wave that rippled outward across the entire Northern Alliance. In Silverpine, infected wolves in silver cages suddenly went still. Their white eyes cleared. The foam vanished. They blinked, confused, and called out for their families. In Nightshade, a mother checking on her sick daughter found the girl sleeping peacefully, her fever broken, her breathing steady. In River Moon, the young girl in the cage stopped crying. The corruption in her veins receded. She looked up at her mother through clear eyes and whispered, "Mama." In Ironwood, in Stormcrest, in every pack across the north, every infected wolf was instantly healed, every severed pack bond reforged. The silver death vanished as if it had never existed. In distant villages, wolves felt the change. A presence, warm, protective, maternal, settled over them like a blanket. The moon goddess had returned to the world. Children stopped crying. Families reunited. The plague was over. Luna Supreme Arabella turned to face Jack. He stared at her through tears, his face a mask of grief and awe. She was breathtaking. She was terrifying. She was everything he'd lost. She reached out to touch his face. Her hand passed through him like mist. "I cannot touch you any more," she whispered, and the pain in her voice was palpable. "I am spirit and flesh, but more spirit now. The mate bond is gone, Jack. I am everyone's Luna now. I cannot belong to just one." Jack's voice was hoarse. "You gave up everything, for wolves who cast you out, for people who didn't deserve you. For innocents who needed salvation," Arabella corrected gently. "This is what true leadership means, Jack. Not ruling over others, but serving them at any cost. Even the cost of your own happiness? Especially then." Suddenly a voice echoed through the temple, ancient, feminine, filled with warmth. "Daughter, you have chosen well." The moon goddess's presence filled the courtyard. No one could see her, but all felt her, vast, loving, eternal. "Your sacrifice moves me, and so I bend the ancient laws for one who loves so purely." A beam of moonlight struck Jack Hansen. He gasped as silver energy flooded through him. His body glowed just for a moment before the light faded, but something had changed. He felt different, stronger, more. The goddess spoke. "Jack Hansen, you are bound as guardian to Luna Supreme. You will age 1 year for every 10, living centuries as she does. You cannot touch as mortals do, but you will never be apart. Rule the wolves in the physical realm while she guides from the spiritual. This is my gift to true mates who sacrificed all." The presence faded, leaving stunned silence. Jack and Arabella stared at each other. It wasn't the life they'd wanted. There would be no children, no physical intimacy, no normal mate bond. But they had eternity together in a different way. Partners in guardianship, bound by purpose if not by touch. "I will serve beside you," Jack said, his voice steady despite his tears. "Even if I can't hold you, even if I can never feel your skin against mine, I will serve beside you for 1,000 years." Arabella smiled, the first genuine smile since her transformation. "That's more than I thought I'd have," she said softly, "and it's enough." 6 months passed. The Northern Alliance was rebuilt stronger than before. Alpha King Jack Hansen ruled with unprecedented wisdom and compassion. People whispered that he spoke with the moon goddess herself, and they were right. Arabella guided him through their transformed bond, her counsel shaping every decision. At each full moon, Arabella manifested fully physical for 1 night. She and Jack would walk through the restored gardens of the wastes, no longer forbidden, now sacred, side by side. They couldn't touch, but they talked for hours about the kingdom, about the pacts, about everything and nothing. It was a glimpse of what might have been. And it was enough. The other alphas faced their reckonings. Garrett Stone built a shrine to Arabella in Silver Pine's center square. Every morning he knelt there and asked forgiveness, knowing it would never come, but asking anyway. Tobias Douglas stepped down as Alpha of Rivermoon. His nephew, Drake Douglas, took the mantle with Luna Supreme's blessing. Tobias spent his remaining years working in the Pax orphanage, trying to earn redemption 1 child at a time. Regina Frost became Luna Supreme's high priestess, spreading her teachings across the territories. The Cold Alpha learned compassion through service. Healer Damian Cross dedicated his life to healing in Arabella's name, traveling from pack to pack, treating anyone who needed help, free of charge, seeking no glory. Marcus Vale was executed for treason. His co-conspirators were stripped of their ranks. His name became a curse word. But beyond the individual redemptions, the culture itself changed. Young wolf girls were no longer valued only for their ability to bear children. The word Barren lost its power as an insult. Strength was defined by character, not by fertility. Arabella's legend spread. The Luna who rose from death, they called her. Every wolf pup was taught her story, the healer cast out, the exile who became divine, the woman who proved that true power comes not from what others give you, but from what you choose to become. On a cliff overlooking the thriving north, Arabella stood with Silas Kane beside her. He was freed now from his millennium of service. He could finally rest, finally fade, finally join his long-dead mate in whatever came after. "Do you regret it?" he asked gently. Arabella looked at the distant castle where Jack ruled. Even from here, she could feel him, their bond different now, but no less real. "I regret what I cannot have with him," she admitted. "I regret that I'll never feel his arms around me, never bear his children, never grow old watching our grandchildren play." Silver tears rolled down her cheeks, the only moisture her body produced now. "But I saved thousands. I ended suffering. I proved that a woman's worth isn't measured by her womb, but by her heart." She smiled, and it was radiant. "They called me Barren, the ultimate failure, the cursed one." Her voice strengthened. "Now I am the mother of every northern wolf. Every pup born is blessed by me. Every love story mine to guide. Every pack bond mine to protect." She spread her arms, and silver light rippled across the territories. "I am the most fertile force in existence. I don't give life to individuals. I give life to an entire civilization." The wind carried her words across the north, and somewhere in every territory, wolves felt her presence and were comforted. So here's what I want to know, and I really want to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think Arabella made the right choice? Would you have chosen love, or would you have chosen duty? Because honestly, I'm still torn. Part of me thinks she deserved happiness after everything they put her through, but another part understands why she couldn't walk away. Drop a comment and tell me what you would have done in her place. Would you sacrifice everything for people who threw you away? I'm genuinely curious. And if this story moved you, if Arabella's journey resonated with something in your own life, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that being called broken doesn't mean you are broken. That being underestimated is sometimes the first step to becoming unstoppable. Subscribe if you haven't already, because next week, we're diving into a story about what happens when even the most powerful Luna faces a threat she can't defeat alone. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Now, back to Arabella's ending. They abandoned Arabella Douglas because they thought she was broken. They looked at her and saw failure, saw worthlessness, saw a woman cursed by the goddess herself. But Arabella was never broken. She was becoming, and in becoming Luna Supreme, she proved the most powerful truth in the world. True power doesn't come from what others give you. It doesn't come from titles or validation or being chosen. It doesn't come from meeting someone else's expectations or fitting into their narrow definition of value. True power comes from what you choose to become despite them. Despite the rejection, despite the exile, despite every voice that told you that you were less than broken, cursed, worthless. Arabella rose from the ashes of their cruelty and became something they couldn't comprehend, something they couldn't control, something so powerful that the very wolves who cast her out had to kneel before her and beg for mercy. But here's the thing. And this is what makes her story legendary. She didn't choose power for revenge. She chose sacrifice for redemption. Not her redemption, theirs. The packs abandoned her, but in the end she saved them all. She became the most powerful Luna the North had ever known. And her legend, it will endure for 1,000 years, carved into the hearts of every wolf who ever felt worthless, inspiring them to rise, to transform, to prove their worth on their own terms. This is the legend of Arabella Douglas, the barren Luna who saved the world, the woman they threw away, the goddess who came back.
If Arabella's story touched you, if it reminded you that your worth isn't defined by what others say about you, then like this video, share it with someone who needs to remember that they're not broken, they're becoming, and subscribe, because I have so many more stories about women who refused to stay small, who took their pain and forged it into power, who proved that the only person who gets to define you is you. Until next time, remember, they don't get to decide your worth, you do.